We are back with NBA coverage, and in this one I will break down the entire season so far. To start out with the Cavs, obviously, to this point, maybe the best team in basketball, depending on who you ask. Though you can also look at the record and see that they are 30-4 right now after winning last night, on a 9-game win streak currently, and also started out the season winning 15 straight games, setting a franchise record for themselves. And they're doing it in many different ways, to be completely honest with you. I've seen numerous games, especially in a blowout win of theirs against the Warriors. They're utilizing a lot of team basketball. They don't even have the likes of Donovan Mitchell or any of their core players going off every single game. Karis LeVert has stepped up big time in his role as a potential six-man and has had some pretty good games for them. Not to mention, you've had the likes of Ty Jerome and Sam Merrill coming off the bench and shooting the lights out. In reality, you can see that Donovan Mitchell leads the team in scoring with 23.4 points per game on relatively great efficiency for his standards, but the true factors leading into such a hot start for them, and honestly it's continued outside of a few close losses to the likes of Atlanta twice, Boston and Miami, for just the weirdest of reasons. I feel like it all begins with Darius Garland and his improved efficiency this season. To end off last campaign especially, he seemed to have struggled with just making shots and being efficient with the basketball in his hands as a primary ball handler. For him to take an increase, especially at this point, 30 games through, he's already close to 50, 40, 90 shooting splits after shooting relatively below average in that stretch and ending off last campaign with his lowest points per game total since the 2020 season, and also one of the worst marks of three-point percentage in his career. And they have not always asked him to necessarily go off in scoring, though he definitely has, especially with a 39-point performance that he had earlier in the season, with a good amount of three-pointers made as well. He's also managed to keep turnovers to somewhat of a minimum, the 2.9 assist to turnover ratio so far this season. The ascent in Evan Mobley's game has also been important here in this stretch. His 18.9 points per game and 8.8 rebounds don't necessarily seem to jump off the table, but they are very much needed for this basketball team. And they start to recognize this as well, with the likes of Kenny Atkinson being there, having that experience with Jared Allen, right? But now you are dealing with a sort of more versatile prospect, I should say, in Evan Mobley, as he can also stretch the floor, though in seasons past he has struggled to do just that. He, last season, managed to just put up only 37.3% shooting from the field in the season after he shot just a atrocious 21.6% from beyond the arc. And his 57.9% shooting overall was the highest mark of his career, but teams were not necessarily willing to commit to him beyond the arc. He came into the NBA with the ability to shoot, but it has seemed as though he just refuses to take them in years past. Now, already in this season so far, they've encouraged him to shoot a little more, and it seems as though he will not only have his best season in terms of shooting totals, as he's already to this point made the most threes in a single season in his entire career, but he's kept the relative efficiency as well. 57.5% overall shooting, and not to mention his highest total percentage from beyond the arc in his career with 43.5% shooting. That has come a long way, as now they have to account for him out there as a potential threat. He's also had multiple possessions where he's taken the ball up the court, and they seem to be involving him in more actions as well. So now that creates a problem if you have him leaning into his versatility, and you still have to deal with the rebounding and just absolute paint beast in Jarrett Allen the entire time. And then that opens the floor for their other role players to get going as well. This all culminated in their game last night to extend their 9-game winning streak, in which Evan Mobley shot 3 of 6 from 3 and had 34 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists on the night, with no other player of theirs having over 20, and with Karis LeVert having 17. They are seriously a threat out of the Eastern Conference if they can maintain this. I mean, there is just no other way to say it. You can beat teams in any way. They've won close games. They've blown the brakes off different teams. And they can beat you with different players on a per-night basis. You don't have to always rely on Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, it seems, which is a scary realization, especially if they can maintain this level of proficiency going into a potential postseason bid. Because that is the time where you would definitely want Donovan Mitchell to step his game up. As for the team they beat last night in the Dallas Mavericks, they are on a relatively different course to this point. They seem to have done well this season when you look at their averages. They're the 8th best scoring offense, the 5th most efficient team in terms of field goal percentage, and also the 9th most efficient team in terms of three-point percentage. You would believe that with that kind of standing, they would be faring a lot better right now. But the Western Conference is cruel in their competition, and they have certainly felt the brunt of that. They have been on a 4-game losing streak after winning their first game in this latest stretch without Luka Doncic against the Suns by 9. He being slated to miss an entire month of basketball is bound to hurt the Mavericks in many ways, as they've had to have other players like Quentin Grimes and such come in and take primary roles, which is never going to lead you to victory. Man had 26 points last night. That scared absolutely no one. You would need other players in that moment, like Spencer Dinwiddie, for example, to set their games up, and that just did not happen in this one. For reference, though, they had started out the season having a pretty good record in games without Luka Doncic. But without Kyrie Irving as well, yeah, they may drop a few more games. So they'll have to see when he is able to come back and play ball for them. But when those guys are healthy, they are performing relatively well. Doncic is doing his usual damage, though it's not the damn near 38-point triple-double he was having for quite a while last season, and his efficiency has definitely dropped a little bit. As for Kyrie, he is putting up a little less in terms of points per game average, but is still around 50, 40, 90, and is pretty much at 49, 44, and 89.9% from the free throw line. That goes a long way. Klay Thompson has been a bit of a hit or miss for them right now. He has definitely won them some games with his three-point shooting and has also kept them in some games. But there are also games where he himself, by missing some quality threes, not necessarily shot them out of games, but made it harder for them to potentially mount comebacks. I don't think I can say enough about Daniel Gafford as well. The fact that this man is averaging 11.9 points per game and 6.2 rebounds with 1.4 blocks per game on 71.9% shooting from the field, which is most likely one of the highest marks in the league. He has been, since they traded for him at the trade deadline in 23, he has been just a great addition to this basketball team. That there's no other way I can state that. Well, they traded for him in 24. But right now, they currently sit at 6th in the Western Conference at 20-15. Again, depending on how much time Kyrie Irving is slated to miss, they may drop a few more, but they should be able to weather the storm for just a little bit. I don't really believe that they'll go and continue to drop game after game like this. Something will give for them. And yes, ironically enough, it is both Daniel Gafford and Jarrett Allen that are 1 and 2 in efficiency from the field right now. It's definitely been a great addition for them to have. No question about it. With that, we'll move on to... Let's go on to the Brooklyn Nets. They are very much in the notion of going all in for the rebuild. And straight up, no other way to really bring that point home. I mean, you make the move to bring back D'Angelo Russell for whatever god-awful reason. And you're acquiring picks upon picks, so much draft capital over the course of the many transactions that they've had. So they recognize that this season is going to be a little bit of a waste, even though you have had the likes of Cameron Johnson and Cameron Thomas stepping up and winning you a few games here and there. Their last 2 wins in their last 7 matchups have been against the Bucks in Milwaukee for some random reason. But they are making it happen. So I guess that can't truly be denied. Cameron Johnson has been leading the way for them with the most total points on the team, seeing as Cameron Thomas missed some substantial time due to injury. Dennis Schroeder, again, doing decent work for them when he was there, but they chose to trade him to Golden State. And Dorian Finney-Smith was also doing relatively fine for them before he was traded to Los Angeles for the Lakers. Everyone else is really just, I don't know. They're trying to see what they have. I mean, you're giving Jalen Wilson and Noah Clowney, for example, who are some of the recent first-round talents that they've selected over the past couple of years. You're giving them quality minutes. And I don't know. Neither of them are necessarily shooting the best given their respective positions on the floor. You're then also playing guys like Keon Johnson, a Blazers reject. Trendon Watford is also a Blazers Kings reject, actually. Like, just, I guess this is just what it is for, yeah, Blazers reject. This is just the state they're in. They're just trying to see what they have now and trying to build for the future, really. with all the draft capital that they've acquired. Because with this current roster, there's just no way that they're going to compete with most NBA teams. Though again, they seem to have the Bucks number. I think the two players that need to be talked about here for the Nets would have to be that of both Ben Simmons and also Nicholas Claxton. For a man that is getting paid as much as he is by this team, he has the 214th most points per game in the NBA with just 5.9 when he has played. 6.9 assists is fine, but he has just never, despite all the offseason videos he can make, he has never taken the step that he would need to take in terms of acquiring a legitimate jump shot and even becoming more efficient at the free throw line so as not to keep dodging out of taking contested layups or contested jumpers. He's not done that at any point in his NBA career, and it's continuing to affect him here. I would expect him to be gone when his contract is up. There's no way that any sane individual in that Brooklyn Nets front office would want to keep this man after he basically missed the first couple of seasons out of his contract and then comes back and doesn't even really produce anywhere near the level that a contract like that demands. In fact, those numbers literally make it look like he's a role player, the 11th man on the roster or something like that. Like, all of these mostly random players to the casual NBA fan are outperforming you on a per night basis. And you have acquired all this capital, all this money on your end. It's ridiculous. Also, Nicholas Claxton. I don't know what it is with Nicholas Claxton, but man, I got some problems, bro. Every other time I'm hearing about Nicholas Claxton, it's never about his performance. It's the fact that his attitude and different tendencies on the court are just like childish at times for the most part. You mean to tell me that this nigga goes ahead and kicks the ball into the stands and then tries to pick up a cushion off the chair and throw it at a ref? And at every turn, he's either getting into it with someone else on the other team. Literally, in the game against the Nets, he had to have said something to Andre Jackson Jr. because there's no way that the nigga gets slapped like that. Then he's trying to talk to Giannis all crazy in the game. Like, I don't know. This may be another individual that might just really be discontent with his situation. The man is shooting 56.7% from the field and grabbing 7.6 rebounds a night, which leads the team. But something tells me he's just not really motivated to continue being a part of that basketball team. But that's just me. Speaking of the Bucks, after starting off the season 4-9 with their loss to Charlotte for some reason, they have won 13 of their last 19 ball games, albeit to the credit, or all credit to the likes of Bobby Portis Jr. stepping his game up over that course of time, as well as Damian Lillard and Giannis possibly finding a way to coexist as budding superstars in the association. To this point, the Milwaukee Bucks have had the 12th best offense in the league at 112.6 points a night to go along with making around 47.7% of their shots, and they've been one of the, I guess, to this point, they've leveled out at being more middle-of-the-pack team in terms of shooting, but they still have a player in Taurean Prince leading all three-point shooters with around 45% to this point, or at least being a top 3 shooter in the league. Their last loss being to the Nets on Thursday, again in a weird matchup, where Giannis still has taken strides as not just a man grabbing double-digit rebounds while averaging at least 32 points per game. No. His playmaking has definitely elevated this season in one that could be considered the best of his entire career. And he has just become 30 as of December 6th last year. 32.4 points a night, 11.7 rebounds, to go along with 6 assists. It's pretty crazy stuff when you think about it. Overall, the Bucks are getting help from the most unlikeliest of places. Yes, Damian Lillard's averaging 25.1 points per night as well, to go along with making 43.4% of his shots and shooting 36% from downtown. But Chris Middleton, they've also just gotten him back, and they are trying their best to get him reasserted into the lineup. He's averaged 13.6 points per game in the last 11 that he's played in, while also shooting 45.8% from the field and making 43.2% of his shots from downtown. Brook Lopez has continued to be a defensive force in his own right. And AJ Green, for whatever reason, they continue to give him the green light, ironically enough, to shoot the basketball from deep. He is their next most proficient shooter from beyond the arc in terms of volume, with making 44.2% of his shots from deep and averaging 7.7 points per night, doing just that. Like, I kid you not, they're not asking him to do much of anything else. He is there as a pure three-point specialist, and he seems to be doing well at his job. Their next matchup will be played against Portland tonight, so that should be an easy win, all things considered. Moving on to the Thunder, the team that ironically lost to the Bucks in the NBA Cup championship. Though again, given that it was an extra game, it's not necessarily counting towards their overall regular season tally. Because to this point, especially with their win last night against the Thunder, in which Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just continued to do SGA things, they have increased their win streak to 14 straight ball games. He himself has averaged 31.2 points a night, to go along with 6 assists and 5.4 rebounds per game on 52.5% shooting from the field. It should also be noted that the stardom of Jalen Williams, the Santa Clara Jalen Williams, has been important in this stretch as well. He has been their next leading scorer with 20.9 points a night, to go along with 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1.8 steals a night on 48.1% shooting and 35.3% shooting from beyond the arc. It's not just the fact that he's been a co-star alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The fact of the matter is he's been so versatile for them. He has not only played at his typical forward position, they've also asked him to play shooting guard. They've asked him to play center in the absence of Chet Holmgren, who, again, even with him being gone, the fact that they currently stand at 29-5, top team in the West, and second best overall record in the league. That cannot go unnoticed. Isaiah Hartenstein has come right in and asserted himself as exactly what they expected him to be coming out of New York. A dominant force on the defensive end. And he's also been able to put together some games where he can get you a few buckets here and there. He's averaged 12.2 points per game in his appearances to go along with 12.3 rebounds a night. I can't say it enough. This defense, when it comes to having Chet Holmgren back and him on the court at the same time, oh my goodness. You still have Luguentz Dort out there doing great work on the defensive end. Alex Caruso would probably be coming off the bench at this point. He's a defensive threat. Kenrich Williams is a defensive threat. Everybody is just bought in to that sort of system, and they all play it to it. They all played in an excellent execution. There's just no other way to say it, man. Like they've just got it completely. They've got to string it together for a potential playoff run, but I really don't see what's stopping them from doing that outside of health. And again, in the future, potentially going out and getting a star caliber player. As nice as that would be, though, it seems like they're doing just fine. I mean, they quite literally, on the offensive end, I mean, sure, they stand with the 10th best overall offense, but their defense has been their calling card. To this point, they are still the top team in the league in terms of defensive rating. So they are likely going to continue this stretch as long as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander keeps doing what he's doing. Though the Celtics offer a tough matchup. But if they are doing this against the Knicks, especially after coming back from the largest halftime deficit they faced this season, then they should be alright. As for the Knicks, though, even with that loss to the Thunder last night, breaking their 9-game winning streak, they seem to be stringing things together. After their own rough start to the season, they now sit at 24-11 and third in the Eastern Conference, with averaging 117.6 points a night with their offense. And in terms of defense for them, they have also been a pretty respectable defense, having the 8th best mark in defensive rating. Still, it seems though they are also a team with a good amount of wing defenders, I should say. OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart, when they have been on their A games, they are a trio unlike any other when it comes to front court play on that side of the basketball. And Josh Hart has continued his overall tear in terms of efficiency inside the three-point line. 68.4% from 2 would still rank him as one of the best guards in NBA history in terms of 2-point efficiency in a single season, which is ridiculous to think about. They are doing all this as well without a true defensive anchor. Yes, Mitchell Robinson to this point is still out, and it'd be great to have him back and see how they can make that work, because one of those wing defenders is probably going to have to move on the bench. So again, if they're all bought in to a winning culture, that may not be an issue. Karl-Anthony Towns is the current center at this point. He's playing out of position, but he has performed offensively, which is what you would expect. He's the 12th best scorer in the league in terms of average, with 24.7 points per game, but also with his latest streak of not only having solid performances on the offensive end by strictly shooting the 3-point ball, which he's averaging 44% from 3 downtown, and also 54.8% generally speaking. But this man has also put together at least 4 30-20 ball games in the last few games, including 3 straight before yesterday night, where he just casually decided to put up 17 points and 22 boards. All of that has led him to becoming the league leader in rebounds per game with 14. Insane to think about. He's also averaged 3.3 assists from that position as well. Jalen Brunson had missed, he missed just a little bit of time, but his 25.1 points per game still lead the squad, and he's still their best facilitator, dishing out 7.7 assists a night, while averaging 47.9% shooting from the field and 39.3% shooting from beyond the arc. They are yet another team that is still not at their healthiest, but they are finding ways to win. They also have been in situations where they don't need to rely on the likes of Karl-Anthony Towns or Jalen Brunson, for that matter, to win ball games. OG Anunoby, at this point in the season, has already dropped his career high in points in a ball game. Josh Hart has put up triple-double after triple-double, and Mikal Bridges has also had some pretty great performances this season after his clunky jumper ruined the first few of his ball games this season. So they're on a surge despite their loss to an albeit tough Thunder team for most NBA teams at this point to go on and face. But again, with their next matchup coming against the likes of the Bulls, they should also be just fine. Speaking of the Bulls, they are the epitome of a mediocre team. The epitome of it. They cannot string together enough wins in a specific stretch of time to save their lives. Even with Zach LaVine being on this recent tear that he's been on, and even with them somehow having the 7th best offensive rating in the league to go along with shooting 46.6% from the field as a basketball team. They just cannot get the job done at all. Every single player on this basketball team has had their fair share of bad games, even if they will have that one performance that seems to stand out above all the rest. They just cannot. They can't get it done. Like, credit to a player like Ayo Dosunmu, for example. But for him to be their best facilitator in terms of efficiency, as he has the best assist to turnover ratio on the team for players that have logged enough time for them this season, while averaging 12.6 points per game and likely coming off the bench on certain nights, as he started only 17 games. Patrick Williams is just... Why do they still have Patrick Williams? Why do they elect to extend Patrick Williams? I really questioned it from the jump. There was just no reason to do it. And currently on this season, he's averaging just 39.9% shooting from the field and 38.1% shooting from the three-point line for only 10.2 points a night. Even Josh Giddey, the new addition, is outperforming you in that, while also being one of their best facilitators right now, with the most assists per game on the team. You would think that that would be coming from somewhere else. They're just inefficient all around, even if it seems like that metric of 46.6% shooting is real. It's not. They're not hitting shots when they need to. It never seems that way. They have lost so many of these recent games by shooting themselves out of the ability to win. The wins against the Hornets and Bucks aside, they got blown out against the Bucks in a prior matchup by shooting themselves out of the ball game. They lost by 25 to the Celtics after managing to knock them off because they pissed off Jason Tatum. And then, again, most infamously, as I talked about in my last video, you had a 16-point lead against the Hawks in the fourth quarter and managed to let them score 50. So when you are struggling to both hit your own shots from the field, and then you can't stop a lick on defense. They are the 29th, or they're ranked 29th in defensive rating, giving up the second most points a night. So even on those nights where you seem to perform or not, it's not going to matter if you can't stop your opponent from shooting the lights out. I mean, it's so atrocious. It's not even just the fact that they're scoring all those points, but they're shooting damn good from the field as well. They're in the bottom half in terms of opponent field goal percentage also. So that says a whole lot. And I don't care about this so-called resurgence that Nikola Jokic has had either. They need to retool their entire roster. So somebody from this core has to go. It could be Zach LaVine. It probably should be Nikola Vucevic instead. It could be both even. But they cannot continue like this. And if Reinsdorf isn't going to even encourage the thought of moving on from these players, well, he has to go. And he probably should recuse himself of power and of his position, from his position as the owner. Because there's no way that you're going to continue to settle for this. Somehow, they're 10th as it currently stands. That's going to change. Do not expect that. They will find themselves out of potential contention for the play-in in just a few short games, really. It's not going to take much. The Suns currently sit at 11th in the Western Conference, and their sort of decline has been mired in their many injuries, especially to Kevin Durant over that stretch of games, as that definitely hurt them in the long run. It also does not help that they are still a team that cannot stop a lick defensively. They rank as a bottom half defense in the league right now. And also allow teams to shoot 46.8% from the field against them on average. That has been the story for them since they've acquired the likes of not just Kevin Durant, but also Bradley Beal, who has also missed substantial time this season and is their third leading scorer, but shooting just 38.6% from beyond the arc, while Devin Booker is shooting just 34.1% from beyond the arc. Tyus Jones, to his credit, has been able to come right in and keep that momentum going. He has played in the most games, or been the player to have appeared in the most games for the Suns this season, and has averaged 12.6 points per game to go along with 6.3 assists and a steal per game. with a 4.9 assist to turnover ratio this season. He's more than doing his part. But still, there is something to be said about his defensive ability, because when you have capable point guards going up against them, naturally, he will be attacked. They will hunt him down and try to get the matchup on him. And at that point, it's over. You can say that about most every other starting player for them. Royce O'Neal may be a different story off the bench at times. But ultimately, if you cannot manage to gain control of a game on both sides of the court with your starters, you're not going to necessarily be successful. It doesn't hurt to have a bench that at times can outperform you as a collective. But there's no way that that should be relied upon, ever. One thing I will note is that as rookies, both Ryan Dunn and also Iguodala seem to have been decent pickups for them. I mean, shit, when you're watching certain games, it seems like they are providing most of the defensive firepower. That's especially what Ryan Dunn was drafted for coming out of Virginia, and Iguodala is a completely different case. But they've come in and they've done relatively well in their respective roles. So I would expect them to continue getting more shots at playing time overall. But, this latest stretch has seen them lose their last 3 games, and now they're going up against the Pacers later on tonight. So that could be very interesting. If you think the Suns are meddling, though, the Jazz are just terrible. They're horrible. They have the 14th best record in the Western Conference, or second worst record in the Western Conference at 7-25, losing 5 straight ball games. Some close, but a good portion of them blowouts as well. And over the course of the entire season to this point, they have just fallen short completely. I mean, there's no other way to say it. To lose after their win against New York on November 23rd. They have gone just 3 out of, they have won just 3 out of their last 15 ball games. It's a shame. It's a shame, man. And it's not even just a single player to blame at this point. The whole team is just struggling. Absolutely. They have the 3rd worst defensive rating in the league. And in terms of offense, they're on the bottom half of that as well. Markkanen has averaged 19.5 points per game to start out this season, but it is a bit of a dip in overall efficiency, as his 43% shooting from the field and just 36% shooting from beyond the arc would suggest. There's definitely been a drop off there. It's his lowest points per game total since his 2nd season in Chicago. As for the rest of the team, there was a period of time where Keontae George was the worst shooter in terms of efficiency in basketball. And while that's gotten just a little bit better, he's still shooting far below average for what a guard would be doing at this point in the NBA. with just averages of 39.5% shooting from the field and 35% from three. Starting caliber players like Taylor Hendricks, for example, shooting far below average as well. When your best shooter in Colin Sexton is technically not even the most proficient from beyond the arc on the team for some reason, as both Drew Eubanks and Walker Kessler just managed to top the 3-point percentage efficiency here, with averaging both 50% shooting from the 3-point line. Anytime that shit can happen, you're in trouble. You're in trouble, man. Like Jordan Clarkson as well, coming off the bench, has done just fine. Just fine isn't going to cut it in this case. It is far from enough. To Walker Kessler's credit, though, he has still been a valuable contributor to this ball club. He's averaged a 10-point and near 11 rebound double-double, while averaging 2.7 blocks per game, which does put him in the upper echelon of the league. So, I mean, you got to give him that. There aren't really a lot of bright spots on this team, but any time that a player in Walker Kessler, for example, is second in blocks per night, you got to really take your wins where you can get them, and that's literally what they find themselves doing right now. I don't necessarily know how it gets better for them. I mean, like, who really wants to go to Utah in terms of free agency or via trade? I just don't really see them being able to make that move right now. But anything can happen. The trade deadline is fast approaching. So, I mean, they should be trying to figure out something. Because for what they were slated to do, this has certainly been an underwhelming season for them so far. Moving on to the Hawks, and I've stated that efficiency has been a problem for Trae Young, but with the help of his most recent tear of 30-point games and double-doubles and points and assists, he has the team as the 7th best in the Eastern Conference with 18 wins and 17 losses. And he's also gotten above 40% shooting from the field just recently, while shooting 33.8% from beyond the arc. He is by far their leader in points per game, and by far their leader in assists per game. By far, 11.9 is tops in the NBA and tops for the Hawks. But they've taken an interesting route to get there. They've given Jalen Johnson, as I've mentioned and spoken highly of in the past, the reins to be a sort of replacement for John Collins, and he seems to be fitting like a glove in that position, while also offering more than John Collins ever really did. He's been a sort of point forward for them. 19.8 points per game is third best on the team. 10.1 rebounds is the best on that basketball team. And he's also contributed 5.3 assists, while being relatively efficient in terms of assist to turnover ratio for any sort of forward in the modern NBA. Not to mention that he's doing this on 51.2% shooting from the field. The thing with the Hawks, though, is that it seems like their players do struggle overall with spacing, especially that of Trae Young. primarily. They're just in the bottom half in that category. And they also defensively find themselves in a bit of a rut more often than not. Like I keep referencing this game that they had against the Bulls, but the fact that you were down 16 in the first place and had to mount such a rare quarter in terms of scoring together to beat them says a lot. If you're not going to, as the Hawks team, outscore an opponent, you're going to lose every time. That's what they seem to pride themselves on. They have to outscore you to win. Which is the name of the game, right? Put up more points in the basket than the other team by the end of regulation, sometimes overtime. They've been 50-50, damn near. Fittingly enough. Like, their record is an encapsulation of that. They will continue to face that if they continue to be such a low-tier defense. Still, again, even with those metrics defensively, you still have Jalen Johnson being a standout defender. And also Dyson Daniels, who leads the league in steals per game with 3.2, had another game last night with at least 5 steals. Rizalche has been a bit of a wild card. I haven't really seen too much of him, and he did have one pretty good game that I noted, but it doesn't seem that, like, especially when it comes to the shooting from beyond the arc issue that the Hawks have, he hasn't helped that problem. In fact, in terms of starting caliber players, when it comes to people that we actually expect to shoot the basketball, 28% from the three-point line is not going to cut it. That is so far below league average. And that, again, sinks them completely when it comes to having to go out and win ball games outright rather than just trying to beat teams up and down the court, because they cannot play both sides of the ball well enough to conform to that style of play. They just can't do it. Even with them being the 6th best offense in terms of offensive rating. And that, again, would culminate in last night's ball game, where despite Trae Young having 33 points and 9 assists, damn near another triple-double, and also shooting 10 of 22 from the field, they lost by 17 to Los Angeles after making just 6 three-pointers out of 34 attempts. So again, you can't get out to a lead, and you can't necessarily shoot your way back in the ball games. You're going to have a tough time trying to mount wins together in the game. But Hawks, they just need to figure out a way to impose a better defensive scheme, really. I know Quinn Snyder has it in him. He led a Jazz team that was number 1 in defensive rating for how many entire seasons? Or tops in the league in terms of defensive rating for a number of seasons in a row with them. It's not that the Hawks lack personnel to impose their defensive will. They're just not putting enough together on a consistent basis to make it happen. The Lakers were a very middle-of-the-pack ball club going into the month of December, but to their credit, they did well for themselves and came out with a pretty substantial record coming out of a streak as well, where they've won 3 of their last 4 without the help of Anthony Davis, who has been sidelined with an injury that he suffered in that very Christmas Day game against the Golden State Warriors. They currently sit at 20 and 14 in the Western Conference, which would make them the 4th seed as it stands. But they quite literally, when you look at it from a statistical lens, do not stand out on either side. They are middle of the pack when it comes to the numbers. Like, dead in the middle in terms of offensive rating, and dead in the middle in terms of defensive rating. But again, more often than not on this stretch, they have been efficient. One, as the 9th best in terms of field goal percentage in the NBA. And they've managed to hold their own on the defensive end over the past few games or so, despite ranking as a bottom 6 defense, or bottom 7 defense in the National Basketball Association when it comes to opponent field goal percentage. Anthony Davis is, again, he's certainly been their star. There's no doubt about it. His 26 and damn near 12 have been very much appreciated for this basketball team. Like I said, though, their decision to move on from D'Angelo Russell after this stretch of time would open up more opportunities for Austin Reaves in a potential point guard role. And that is exactly what has taken place. This is exactly what has taken place. He had his triple-double against the Warriors on Christmas Day, and then proceeded to put up 26, 16, and 6 against the Kings. Put up 35 and damn near a triple-double in that game against the Cavs. Opened up the new year with a damn near 15-point triple-double against the Blazers in a win. And then last night against the Hawks, despite a low efficiency in terms of shooting, he still contributed 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists in a point guard role. And he has played in these last few games. His minutes have continued to increase over the course of the season. He played 39 minutes in last night's ball game as the through and through point guard, because you're certainly, you may not be opposed to give that job to Max Christie, but let's be real, Austin Reaves has the higher upside for them. Though I will say that Max Christie did have a pretty solid game over this stretch, surprisingly enough. So I guess I can't disrespect them too much, right? But yeah, they're just stringing it together. You don't have Anthony Davis, fine. Okay, Austin Reaves is going to step it up. Gabe Vincent has done decent for them over the past month or so as well. But it's still just not optimal. And he could be doing a lot more, especially for the contract that they gave him. They should never have given him all that money if he was going to be a very low rotational player off the bench like this. Dalton Knecht has also had a hell of a rookie season, I might add, as well. His 46.6% shooting from the field and 35.8% shooting from beyond the arc. As a rookie doing this in J.J. Redick's system has been absolutely great to see for them. But you know one thing about the Lakers, despite all of this, when it comes to their record and their ability to seemingly turn it around from this stance, they're always about the drama. You have LeBron missing time for personal reasons. You have them getting into it with Charles Barkley and J.J. Redick and such. Just a whole lot of buzz going on there. And then I guess the fallout, whatever fallout there may have been from the D'Angelo Russell trade, they're just all about their drama at this point. The Clippers are obviously still regarded as the little brother to the Lakers in Los Angeles. They offer a lot less drama to the average NBA fan, and they offer a lot less luster when depending on who you ask, I guess. And there is certainly a disparity in the personnel that they have to offer on their respective teams. But the Clippers are having a similar season despite all of that to the Lakers. They are currently 19-15 right now, sitting at 7th in the NBA, or in the Western Conference, as a play-in team. Keep in mind, too, that they've managed to do all of this without the likes of Kawhi Leonard, who actually, according to Shams Charania, is set to make his return against the Hawks, ironically enough, tonight. So if he actually plays, it's going to be key to see how he does in his first few matchups. Because he's missed all of this time and they've maintained. Will it certainly affect things? Yes, it will. Norman Powell has been their leading scorer and probably one of the best additions they really could have asked for to this point. Because if they didn't have him, I don't really know how likely this would be. His 23.6 points per game, 48% shooting from the field, and 44.1% shooting from beyond the arc will probably take a little bit of a decline as Kawhi Leonard gets himself asserted back into the starting lineup. But I think that contribution off the bench as a potential six-man could be useful. There's also no telling that they, necessarily bench Norman Powell. I mean, you really think about it. You could put James Harden at point guard and have Norman Powell at shooting guard with Kawhi Leonard playing the small forward position, with Derrick Jones Jr. playing the power forward position. Maybe switch off if you want Kawhi Leonard down there. Seeing as he's more, I guess, he's got a bit more physicality, true physicality, to match up with other power forwards. We've seen that in years past. Derrick Jones Jr. is dynamic and as athletic as he is. He can't necessarily match up in that aspect. And then Zubac, obviously, this season, who has been on a tear himself. His 15 points per game and 12.4 rebounds. Continuing to crash the glass and also being relatively efficient while doing so, averaging 60.9% shooting from the field overall. But again, all of these random players, to the common NBA fan, have stepped up and contributed to a winning organization. Despite them being in the bottom half in terms of scoring offense in the league, they happen to have the 5th best defense in the league. And it keeps them in ball games that they really shouldn't be in when you look at the matchups on paper. They find a way. And if Kawhi Leonard can come in and play even relatively well, the Clippers could continue to rise up and be a sneaky threat in the Western Conference. The Raptors, with an ascending point forward in Scotty Barnes, with a capable scorer in RJ Barrett, with a solid facilitator in Emmanuel Quickley, and with a rise of other guys like Ochai Baji and Grady Dick, they were slated to be way better than this, whatever this is. Instead, they sit at 8-27, the 13th seed, per se. Can't even say seeding, but they're that bad in their own conference, and they don't seem to be getting a lot better. They've lost 12 of their last 13 ball games, and their last win prior to their last one against the Nets happened to be against the Pacers, ironically enough. But everyone has been on just like, I don't know. What has gone wrong for them, I would say, is the fact that Emmanuel Quickley did get injured 5 games into the season and has not come back since. that has probably messed up some of the chemistry there. Still, is he that irreplaceable, I would say, that you go on this much of a losing streak without him? I mean, you've had good nights from Grady Dick mixed in there, who this season has averaged 17.4 points a night and has been a relatively good shooter for them. Scotty Barnes from the three-point line has definitely declined. 29.3% from the field is atrocious. And overall, it doesn't help that, again, teams are so hell-bent on shooting the three on a per-night basis, and you, as the Toronto Raptors, sit in the bottom half of that territory, being a bottom 10 ball club in three-point efficiency. That will never help you in ball games. And in terms of offensive production, it's not necessarily there. They are also sitting at just 111.2 in terms of offensive rating on a night-to-night basis. They are just really I guess would just be a little shocked by it. I don't know. I would expect other people to be stepping up for them at this current point of time. But again, when it comes to Mayo quickly, if that offset everything, then I mean, hey, let's just say there. Like, well, I guess we just have to see, really. If they can get back into a rhythm with him there, then fine. I mean, their first win in quite some time came with him being in the starting lineup and dropping 21, 15, and 4. That's solid. But then last night's game against the Magic, he had 11 points on 17 shots, missing 13 of those very shots, and dropping 11 dimes in a 9-point loss. But I want to see for a few more games before I really say that it's just a complete and total loss of a season for them. They can still storm back, I believe. But they've got to get healthy, and they need better production from their core guys. They need better production from their core guys on a consistent enough basis. The Magic are quite the case this season as well. For a team that does not have either Franz Wagner or Paolo Banchero to this point, and for a team that ranks dead last in terms of offensive rating on a per-night basis, the fact that they are still 21-15 to this point and fourth in the Eastern Conference speaks volumes. Their defense is that fucking good. They are the second best by just 0.1 points per game behind the Thunder in terms of defensive rating, despite having a fairly mediocre opponent field goal percentage allowed. And it just becomes crazier to even think that they're still on quite the tear, because now Jalen Suggs is going to miss a pretty extended period of time, and he suffered a back injury in their game against the Raptors last night. He had to be carted out on a wheelchair. But when he has played, he has been living up to his contract for the most part. He's contributed 16.4 points per game and has shot 41% from the field overall. The entire team does struggle with shooting from beyond the arc, and it seems like they will need to improve on that over the course of the season if they even want to find themselves in contention for anything. Because ranking dead last in three-point efficiency is not always going to contribute to winning long term. That's a fact. 31% from the field as a squad is pretty atrocious, if you ask me. But again, they're just finding ways, and especially when it comes to the likes of Goga Batadze somehow having maybe a pretty solid season. This could very well be the best one he's had in his NBA career. Yes, by far. I mean, he was with the Pacers. He was nothing relatively special at all, but he's seemed to have come into his own rather. They still are delusional for saying though that they should keep him and trade Wendell Carter Jr. That's just not no, I don't believe that is even rational at all. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, if anything, was supposed to be the quintessential player to help them with their three-point shooting problem, and he himself has shot 38.8%, well, 30.8% from the field. What the that's just not optimal at all. You would expect him, of all people, to have the best efficiency on the team, but he actually ranks as one of the worst. The real credit that I would give to a player, though, to cap off everything for the Magic, is Tristan da Silva. He has stepped in place of Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero the past few games and has put together some solid performances. He, especially with performances against the Nets in late December and with the game last night, having 25 points, shooting 71% from the three-point line and making 9 of his 13 shots from the field. In some of these games, he has single-handedly contributed to wins for them. Though, again, he's had his fair share of duds as well. In that same stretch, he's had 2 games where he went completely scoreless. So the jury is truly still out on him. But if they can get any ounce of production from him consistently to weather the storm without Banchero and Wagner, both Wagners actually are out to this point. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, so they have to hope that they can get at least some of these guys back. Banchero seems to be seems to be just a little closer to his return than further away, but they're finding a way. That's I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that, because if you can manage to make it happen without the core guys, when you get the core guys back, it should be like clockwork, honestly. So you should still be watching out for the Magic at this point, even if they don't necessarily seem like they are a threat right now. They could very much sneak up on some teams over the course of the next few months. Pacers have been yet another Eastern Conference team who have been middle of the pack, and that has been largely due to a decline in Tyrese Haliburton's game. You can attribute it to a number of things, but when he is not at the peak of his powers, the overall team feels it, even if, yes, they are still a roster who possesses 3 different field generals in him, Nembhard, and McConnell. But if he's not on fire, or at least doing enough to help his team win ball games, they're just going to drop every time. Because what you see is kind of what you get with the Pacers night in and night out still. They are still an offense that is top 11 in the league in terms of scoring, when their defense is their typical brand of bad, as they are a bottom 10 defense. They're still going to be a team that tries to get out in front and beat the brakes off you, similar to the Hawks. And if they can't do it, whether that be due to the inefficiency of Tyrese Haliburton or, a lack of ability to score from elsewhere, they are going to find themselves in losing position more often than not. Again, they've gotten some fair stretches simply because of their efficiency. They're the fourth best offense in the league in terms of made field goal percentage, with 48.8% from the field and 37.4% shooting from beyond the arc. Also ranks them in the top 10 in that category as well. That certainly helps. They have, as of late, turned things around just a little bit with Tyrese Haliburton against the Heat on Thursday, putting up maybe his finest performance of the season, having 33 points and 15 assists without a single turnover in the ballgame. Despite what is a down year for Haliburton, his 4.9 assist to turnover ratio ranks him, or at least ties him, with the same mark that Tyus Jones put up to this point of the season. Bennedict Mathurin has been a marvel for them to get back. His scoring off the bench, or even in starting lineup sometimes, does not, you can tell that they severely missed it during their run. It did help that they were getting some of those points from elsewhere, but like I said, that series against the Celtics could have been very different if Bennedict Mathurin was not hurt and out for the season. He so far has had 16.7 points per game this season, starting 30 games, been coming off the bench in some, while shooting 46.2% from the field and also 36.7% from beyond the arc. Pascal Siakam has led the way overall as the best scorer, their best rebounder, and also their best three-point shooter in terms of players that attempt a good amount of threes per game. I'm not even going to account for Aaron Nesmith averaging 54.5% shooting from beyond the arc, because he's averaging less than 2 attempts a game, whereas Siakam is putting up 4.4 per game and averaging 43.9% from beyond the arc. If they can have Tyrese Haliburton again step it up, they should be okay. But again, it could be an overall slump when it comes to shooting and not necessarily finding the rhythm he would need. It could be injuries, as different people have thrown that out. But I don't know. They sit fine right now. They're just on the verge of something at the 8th seed. But they've got to be able to turn it around fast. Luckily for them, the Eastern Conference offers a cushion. So it's not like they're in such a hurry. But they definitely want to make things right by a certain point of time. I'll talk about the Hornets and Pistons in tandem with each other, because both of these teams are just so fucking weird at times. The Hornets have had LaMelo Ball have his finest season so far, and they are wasting his fucking time. They currently sit at 7-26 after losing, ironically enough, to the Pistons last night. They are getting contributions from absolutely nobody else. I mean, at least the people that you would expect them to be getting contributions from. Brandon Miller is doing fine, but more specifically, when we talk about guys like Miles Bridges, like Grant Williams, like Cody Martin, like Vassell Micic, none of them have been doing much of anything. Or at least enough to truly get LaMelo Ball the help that he needs.
Oh, no.
It also helps that their most active players on the team are as follows. Tied at first, Cody Martin and Josh Green. And tied at second, Seth Curry and Moussa Diabate. So injuries are kind of hindering their abilities to compete as well. But it's still bad even when everybody's healthy. LaMelo Ball will have great performance after great performance, and they'll still be losing by damn near double-digit points by the end of a ball game. They have dropped, I kid you not, their last 9 ball games. In their last, like, oh my gosh, they just suck. They suck, bro. There's no other way around it. There's literally no other way to say it, bro. They last won against the Pistons in overtime, ironically enough, with LaMelo Ball. That was a grand LaMelo Ball performance with the help of Brandon Miller also hitting what would be the game-winning shot. But since then, they have won just 1 game out of their last 23. Well, 1 game out of their last 18, rather. Just like, you gotta make it make sense, bro. I don't know. As far as the Pistons go, like, you mean to tell, like, both of these teams consistently year in, year out, to start out the fucking decade, were fighting over who was gonna be the worst. The fucking Pistons were waiting until damn near the turn of the new year last season to go and get their first win of the year. They now already find themselves with 16 outpacing their 14 from last season. That's major credit and respect to what Cade Cunningham has been able to do, along with the helps of, Jaden Ivey, even contributors like Malik Beasley actually learning to hit jump shots for some reason and being the 3rd leading scorer on this ball club. Jalen Duren continuing to notch double-double after double-double, etc. But no credit is gone to Tobias Harris, man. No credit. Absolutely none. They could be facing some trouble, though, as Jaden Ivey was taken out of ball game against the Magic with a broken leg. So he's going to miss a good amount of time. Just got to make note of that right now. They may still be okay. I mean, they won last night. Yes, the Hornets are bad, but going into this game against the Timberwolves, this is going to be a rough one. It's going to be a rough stretch of time. I did not see anything coming through stating the full, timeline for Jaden Ivey to potentially return. But, of course, there's probably going to be a reevaluation period at some point. So we'll just have to wait and see what that looks like. Obviously, the Kings had a solid start to the season before going on the losing streak that would ultimately send Mike Brown out the fucking doors for some reason. But then came Doug Christie, and after dropping their game against the Lakers last Saturday, they have won 3 straight. Now, granted, though, the first couple were against reeling Mavericks and 76ers squads, but their latest win last night came against a very strong Grizzlies team by 5 points, with them scoring 138, as 6 different players per their squad finished in double figures. Trey Lyles off the bench for some reason had 16, but Domantas Sabonis, the league leader in triple-doubles, managed to put up yet another one in this ball game, giving him his 30th on the season, to go along with 3 different triple-doubles so far. It also helped that Malik Monk, in a starting position, put up 31 points on 11 of 20 shooting from the field. DeMar DeRozan actually managed to stretch the floor relatively well, making 4 of his 7 3-pointers to go along with his 29 points on the night. De'Aaron Fox is their, best player, you can argue, and he has put up the most points per game, but it's revealing to see that he put up 23 points and needed 23 shots to get there with 8 of 9 free throws made. That's not good. That's not good. But they overcame it for a victory, so you'll take it. I guess Doug Christie seems to be doing quite fine. They still got a lot more to prove. Again, Grizzlies are just one strong team. Now you're going up against a team like the Golden State Warriors tomorrow. They are meddling, but they are still considered to be a very solid basketball team. You've got to string together some victories here. You can't just continue to go one and done. And then if you continue to do that, maybe more people will believe in what Doug Christie can do. But again, like I said, I guess the hire to, promote him in-house was fine. Former Kings player. He's going to recognize the system. And he'll definitely get some players to rally behind him early on. Seems like that could be happening. Again, it helps that Malik Monk has, become a bit more of a starter when they've needed it. Because, trust me, they have. Keegan Murray, on the other hand, despite him having 11.6 points per game, has taken a nosedive, compared to his production last season. This is his worst season to date, especially when it comes to efficiency. I mean, just 28.6% from the field for a person that was slated to be one of the better 3-and-D wings the NBA had to offer. That's kind of shocking to me. But they've overcome, even with them playing some of the most random players imaginable. Keon Ellis has been a sneaky player for them ever since he's entered. A solid contributor off the bench for them on both sides of the ball somehow. He's carved out his own niche on this squad. Doug McDermott has not. And I don't know why they didn't elect to just keep Sasha Vezenkov instead of electing to get Doug McDermott for some reason. But that's neither here nor there. Kevin Huerter continues to be quite the interesting case. He has not had his best season with them at all. In fact, this is his worst stretch since his first season in the NBA with the Hawks. Just 30.4% shooting from the field. Just 9 whole points per game. So again, they've got a long way to go here. They can probably use a little more firepower in terms of getting a true defender. Because that's the thing. While they can score with the best of them, I mean, they are quite literally a top 10 offense in terms of overall scoring. But they are yet another team who sinks themselves by having a pretty below average defense. And on most nights compared to others, it'll hurt them. They were luckily able to outscore the Grizzlies here after giving up just 133 points. I say just 133 points. That's kind of crazy. You're not gonna win ball games. It's not sustainable. So they've got to tighten up on that real fast. They would need to, especially because it seems like patience in some aspects is wearing thin with not just the overall personnel, but also some of the players on that team. If you can fire Mike Brown that early in his tenure, it may not be so patient with their decision making in terms of potential moves before the trade deadline. So they've got to turn it around very quickly. Especially with the way that the Kings front office works. Because they're just that stupid. But as far as the Grizzlies go, though, they have had a season that I did not I mean, I guess it could have been anticipated in a way. Last season was just a complete and total anomaly for them. Everybody, and I mean every single important or starting caliber player for them was hurt last season. Every fucking body. So naturally, when you get a good amount of that core back, you're going to be able to perform relatively well. They currently sit as the second best team in the Western Conference at 23-12, while averaging 123.5 points per game, which is the highest mark in the NBA for offensive rating. They are coming off a game or so where, again, as I mentioned, they put up their highest total points in regulation in their franchise history, and they've continued to get near that mark game in, game out. Zach Edey has actually been a surprisingly versatile player for them. Surprisingly. I don't know why they feel emboldened to let the man shoot three-pointers, but this is, again, the same team that's allowing guys like Jay Huff to do exactly that. So, Ja Morant has missed some time due to injury as well, but it does help that both Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane, along with Santi Aldama, are down the, there to hold down the fort, I guess. Jalen Wells has also blossomed as a rookie for them. His 11.8 points per game as a rookie to go along with 45.3% from the field generally, and also 39.4% shooting from beyond the arc. As a spark off the bench, have been absolutely needed for this roster to give them that extra bit of juice if guys like Morant are going to miss time. Brandon Clark is back off the bench and continuing to be the defensive force that he has been when he's been healthy. Scottie Pippen Jr. also playing off the bench in a sort of Tyus Jones role that he had under Ja Morant in that 21-22 season, has done kind of the same thing here in bench minutes with 10.7 points per game and 5 assists off the bench to go along with averaging 47.3% shooting from the field, 36.7% shooting from beyond the arc. Like, it's pretty crazy how much they've been able to turn it around. They would naturally shake back, but to do it this quickly, kind of interesting. And they're getting contributions from everybody. Like, no stone unturned here. Everybody's finding a way to buy in and contribute. And that's exactly what you want for a team that could be on the path to a championship if things go a certain way. So, we'll continue to see how their season progresses from there. And as for the Portland Trailblazers, I guess if it does help, Donovan Clingan has also asserted himself as a sort of defensive presence for the Blazers this season. That's really about it. There's not a lot that we can find about the Blazers that is redeemable. They're bottom half defense. They're bottom 5 offense. I mean, they're losing game after game, just getting the brakes beaten out of them. Though they have managed to sneak some wins in against the Nuggets and the Mavericks over the course of the last month or so, which makes absolutely no sense. They, deservedly so, are 13th in the Western Conference, though at least they have double-digit wins, which a few of these other teams can't even say right now. Shaden Sharp is they still have too much going on at the guard position. They have too much, and it's continuing to just kill all of their momentum. You've got Sharp, you've got Simons, you've got Henderson, and now, for whatever reason, you want to start incorporating Delano Banton into your lineup. When the fuck has Delano Banton ever been an effective player for a basketball team anywhere? And then he gets to Portland from the likes of the Raptors, and they think he's the next big thing because of his frame. Like, I believe he's the tallest point guard that they have to offer or so. Yeah, 6'8", 204 as a point guard. Oh, yeah, this guy's going to be the next, like, I don't even know what point guard they could be possibly thinking about. Like, I can't even say a name, because to even try and put somebody historically great in the same sentence as Delano Banton is going to be absolute blasphemy. And I'm not even going to put myself in that situation. But there's too much going on there. And then they are also in a situation where they're holding on to Jeremy Grant for all of this time. And it feels to me like if you're getting Danny Avdija, a younger prospect who's not doing much worse than Jeremy Grant right now, it feels like you'd probably want to stick with him long term. I mean, Jeremy Grant is getting up there in age. Let's be honest there. He's getting older and he's getting up there in age, man. You can't hold on to him forever and also contribute or allocate all of that money to him over the course of these next few years. Something's got to give at some point. He literally cannot be there forever. Robert Williams III did return for some action this season, but it feels like, to me, they've missed out on a lot of these moves. You know, the decisions to get the likes of Robert Williams III, picking up Tamani Kamara from the Bucks for some reason during that trade for, you know, getting Damian Lillard out of there, and then having DeAndre Ayton here as your anchor when he quite literally was bounced out, thrown out, cast away out of Phoenix for being a defensive liability and not having any shred of effort on a basketball court. That's the guy you're banking on to try to propel you back into winning territory, and it just has not happened. Inefficiency is just all over the place with this team. They cannot hit a shot to save their life. They cannot shoot the three ball to save their lives. And they, as a whole, averaging 15.7 turnovers a night as one of the least efficient offenses in the league. The fifth worst in that metric. It's crazy. I don't really see how things get much better for the Blazers unless they're willing to make some moves. I mean, they're not necessarily in a position like the Brooklyn Nets or even, you know, teams that are better off like the Rockets or the Thunder, where they can, you know, fall back on having a ton of draft capital over the course of the next few years. They have not acquired a ton of highly valuable draft picks in these trades. And you're going out and you're getting these people who you believe can contribute well to your basketball team, and they haven't. When those guys subsequently flame out, now you're lost for Now you're at a loss for words and at a loss for potential moves to make, because you've exhausted every single resource that you could to make a splash move, and it gets you to a season where you're 11-22 right now. and going on a streak of multiple losing seasons. There are seasons where a team that was once contending is now just a mere afterthought in the NBA. I can't even say a full-on laughingstock, but they're not threatening anybody anytime soon. Let's just make that very clear. They're not. Speaking of the Rockets, they, like the Grizzlies, are yet another young team in terms of average age who are on an absolute tear this season. In fact, they are half a game behind them in the Western Conference and sit at the 3rd seed. They have gotten quite a bit of very notable contributions from multiple players on this team. You have Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, Amen Thompson ascending this season after a solid rookie season. Though there's still an issue there when it comes to him shooting the basketball. Regardless, when you have 7 different players in double digits on a per night basis, and then Cameron Whitmore, who has been in the G League in some nights trying to develop, is also not too far behind. They're set for success. You're trying to get different parties involved. There isn't necessarily one person trying to take full control of the team per se. At least it will seem that way. You'll definitely have Jalen Green having those games in there where he'll try to be the guy to take over, and then he proceeds to just shoot them out of the action. His inefficiency is still prevalent from beyond the arc. 31.9% shooting, especially from the people that you expect to make them at this point. It's not on par with that. Overall, they do struggle from beyond the arc as a basketball team. But when everybody is bought in to at least getting their shots and getting in the right places to make said shots, you'll find a way to prevail ultimately. Even with that being the second worst mark in the league. They will be in, a little bit of trouble, I guess. If it's necessarily a trouble thing. But they will be missing Jabari Smith Jr. for a little bit of time. He broke his hand in shoot-around during practice. So he's slated to miss a couple of weeks or so. But they should be able to weather the storm this fine if that's 6 other players that are consistently getting the ball and making different things happen on a night-to-night basis efficiently enough to have won a great number of their games to this point. It should be fine. The Nuggets may have finally unlocked something. Finally. It took them a great amount of games in the season to do it after kind of dropping some pretty easy games on paper. I cannot get over that game against the Wizards that they dropped, with Jokic putting up 56, 16, and 8. That's besides the point. Their last loss against the Suns was absolutely atrocious on Christmas Day. It seems to me like at this point, they have begun to figure things out. They would end off 2024 with back-to-back wins, including a historically great night in Utah where Russell Westbrook put up a triple-double without a single turnover, and where Nikola Jokic put up another Nikola Jokic masterclass in this ball game, with him putting up 36, 22, and 11 on 42.4% shooting from the field. That was the 16th such instance in NBA history where teammates put up triple-doubles. And it is the second time for both Jokic and Westbrook each in their careers that they were a teammate with yet another player who did such a thing, as Westbrook did it with, I believe, Paul George in the OKC era, and Jokic did it in the NBA Finals with Jamal Murray in 23. So, they may have finally unlocked something. He still needs more help. I think he still needs more help. Because I don't know if every aspect of it is consistent enough. Especially with last night's ball game. Such a close match that you, yet again, drop. Now, yes, I just saw something that just stated that he had the game-losing turnover. But let me tell you this. They will continue to struggle without end when he is not on the court. And it hurts them every single time. Like, he is contributing to winning. His plus minus has got to be something incredibly absurd. Because when it comes to him being off of the court, they are losing. And they're not just losing basketball games. They're losing by a grave margin. To the point where every time he steps in, it's like they have to battle back from something every single time. So naturally, they would lose this game by 3 points to the Nuggets, well, the Spurs yesterday. A game where this man puts up 41 points and 18 assists, well, 18 rebounds and 9 assists. Having to shoot as much as he did. And still comes that close to winning. But naturally, when he turns the ball over, the fact that I couldn't even note that beforehand shows everything that you still need to know about this basketball team. And that there still are moves that need to be made. Because the man has literally shown that he can do everything. To the point where a last-minute turnover isn't even that much of a headline like that. Even though it should be accounted for. Like, you're not going to give Jokic that much slack. Because this man is consistently putting up 31 points a night as the third leading scorer in the league, to go along with 13.2 rebounds a game and a damn near triple-double with 9.7 assists a night. He's leading the team in steals with 1.7. Every single thing runs through Nikola Jokic right now. As crazy as that sounds. And it can work. But you've got to have more complementary pieces around there. And it hasn't helped when Jamal Murray has been on a decline, when Michael Porter Jr. has been inefficient from 3, which is where he should be doing well from. That's the specialty that they gave him the contract for. Aaron Gordon has missed a lot of time, so that has hurt him. But even when he's been in, the past few games at least, he has not necessarily been as effective as he once was. Russell Westbrook has also been a sort of hit or miss. He's been hitting lately, but especially early on, the waters were looking rough for him. Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson have also been solid contributors in bench roles. I feel like they should be getting more playing time, and to their credit, they have started Peyton Watson on occasion this season, and he's produced relatively well. But they need more firepower, especially on the defensive end. I mean, they can be a top 3 offense, sure, but they are so bad from 3. Just not necessarily efficient enough, or at least effective enough to match. Like, they, don't get me wrong, they do fine in terms of efficiency with 31.8, well 38.1. That is one of the highest marks but they're only attempting 31 threes a night with that efficiency, which is the lowest in the league. And granted, you have a player in Jokic who is so dominant in the paint that naturally you're going to go to there and feed him for most possessions. But even then, he is still shooting 47.9% from beyond the arc on 4.7 3-pointers per game. It's an absurd number for any center, and albeit a player at his current size. But again, it's just, I don't know. They have, a move has to be made for a quality defender. I'll say that. A quality defender that can supply a team with some offense as well. Because they're, every single area on the court, they will get exposed. At every single point on the court. Every single region on the court. Teams are just licking their chops, waiting for a Nuggets defender to go up and guard them, and they're just going to expose them completely. But again, they are doing fine. They currently sit at, the 5th seed with a 19-14 record. And, they're going to look to continue on this streak as they have to run it on the back-to-back against this Spurs team again. Speaking of the Spurs, it's Victor Wembanyama time. It's Victor Wembanyama time. It's not just that, though. His ascent has also, aligned with them having an overall better season compared to last season. They are currently 18-16. They sit at 8th in the Western Conference. And again, they're riding high after not just this win against the Nuggets last night, but also another win against the Clippers, where they won by 36 points. In this game, Wembanyama had 35 points and 18 rebounds on 14 of 22 shooting. He has been absolutely lighting it up from 3, especially over the past few games. And the team as a whole on the season has shot well from 3 for the most part. They have shot 34.5% from the 3 as a whole, which is, I guess, a little, middle of the pack. Overall, though, they contribute enough offense to last. And their defense, especially with the help of Victor Wembanyama, has ascended into the upper echelon. They're a top 11 defense. And they are also making sure that they don't allow themselves to truly get beaten by teams jacking up 3 after 3. Their effectiveness in terms of opponent field goal percentage from the 3-point line is the 7th best mark at just 34.9% shooting on average. Chris Paul has also, it's the quintessential Chris Paul effect. You can't not deny that. Every single place he goes to, he will find a way to win, no matter what it takes. Losing in Chris Paul, at least in the regular season, they don't coexist in the same sentence. They just don't. 9.4 points and also 8.4 assists. By far the leader on the team in that category. He's also hit some big shots in some big moments. 41.4% shooting from the field isn't bad for him at this point. Though 35% shooting from the 3-point line is kind of surprising, given that he was never really the most proficient 3-point shooter, even when he was at the peak of his powers. With the Hornets, with the Clippers, just not really that kind of player. Devin Vassell had recently returned from injury and has contributed nicely as the second leading scorer in that time. Jeremy Sochan has had a pretty interesting ascent as well. 13.9 points per game to go along with 52.4% shooting from the field, though he can't shoot from 3. He can't. You will be fine with leaving that man open. His jumper is clunky as fuck, so they're good with that. For whatever reason as well, they've gotten great contribution out of Julian Champagnie, who is shot 43.3% from the field to go along with 37.2% from the three-point line as a starter in most games this season. Also, shout out to Stephon Castle doing what he's doing as a rookie, averaging close to 11 points per game to go along with 3.6 assists and also getting nearly a steal a game. His shooting has not been the best, but as a two-way caliber player, his defense has stood out for them. And when you're not having situations where he or, I guess, Vassell are funneling down a player to work into Victor Wembanyama's paint and have him block it, they're doing a good job on the perimeter as well, disrupting the offense's ability to truly make moves. And they'll expose you time and again for it. That, again, has led them to a winning record that could be sustained. But I don't see Jokic going out and losing a back-to-back to this team. I cannot possibly see that coming. I'm not going to lie to you. But a very good turnaround for them, to say the least. The Heat are in a very, I should say, dire state right now. Truthfully. That's the best way to put it. They have Tyler Hero out here putting up what may be his finest season of work with 24.1 points per game to go on with 47.8 shooting from the field and 41% from three. He could very well be an all-star. Bam Adebayo has lived up to his contract. Nikola Jokic has been giving them decent production. Terry Rozier has been a solid spark that he has been consistently for teams in the past. They even had rookie Kelly Oubre put up 25 points in their last game against the Pacers, even though they did lose that one by 13. But Jimmy Butler is an unanswered question at this point that is going to continue to linger around this franchise until they find a way to solve it. It's as simple as that. Now, he did not play the best game in that match against the Pacers, having one of his worst performances in the season. But he was also forced to sit out the rest of the fourth quarter for different reasons. And then after said game, he comes out and requests a trade. Now, he already requested a trade on Christmas Day. Pretty reasonable Christmas gift to give an organization, if you ask me. He comes out and asks for one on Christmas Day and suggests the Suns, Mavericks, and Warriors as potential landing spots. He increased that number of teams to pretty much anywhere else in the league. He just wants out of Miami. And then the Heat want to deny it consistently, saying that they, under no circumstances, will trade Jimmy Butler. As a result, he has just gotten, according to Shams Charania, broke yesterday, he is now suspended for the next 7 games. And he's going to look and listen to trade offers during this time. This could have a tremendous, and I don't even think I can say it enough, tremendous impact on how the rest of their season goes. Because, to their credit, again, even with all this extra noise, they are still the 6th seed, standing at 17 and 15. And, despite losing their last game, they did win their last couple before then. So, they're not necessarily in the worst of spots right now, but you would like to have your franchise guy in Jimmy Butler actually want to play basketball for you. And it's not necessarily like he's not producing. His 17.6 points per game And also 55.2% shooting from the field, to go along with 37.5% shooting from beyond the arc, is pretty solid for a player that's about to be 35 years old relatively soon. Well, already 35. But, you know, if he doesn't want to play there, you got to at least be able to find a suitable trade that ensures that you get enough back for such a player. Because the amount of money that you're giving him is a lot to take on for anybody. Luckily, it is the very last year of that contract. So it makes sense for you to offload that from your roster now. And if he genuinely wants to leave, you can't necessarily lose him and get absolutely nothing back. You must find a way to get together a package that includes some very capable players for you to acquire and then immerse into the Heat playstyle. If you're Eric Spoelstra at this point, and if you're Pat Riley at this point. But that's really the story of their season. They're doing fine, but the house is clearly not a home to Jimmy Butler right now, if he just wants out that desperately. So they need to. The time is ticking. They need to figure that out. If they wait too long, they may not find a good enough deal and could get fleeced. I'm going to talk about the Wizards and the Pelicans in tandem because they played each other last night in a battle of absolute ass. Just dog water basketball teams. Seriously. Both of them stand at 6 losses, and the Pelicans, both of them stand at 6 wins, and the Pels have 29 losses, by far the very worst record in the league, and certainly the worst record in the Western Conference. They are also another team who have, I guess you could say, superstar caliber wing players in both Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, being huge question marks looming around their franchise. Do they want to continue to have Brandon Ingram there if the fit is off? And even then, if he's underperforming like this, do they have enough suitors out there willing to go and acquire him? And he has been injured for quite a while at this point. Zion Williamson has also been injured for quite a while at this point, despite him being slated to take that next step. They're consistently waiting for him to do exactly that, and it doesn't happen because of some untimely injury here or there, almost all the time. They had recently gotten Trey Murphy III back for a while, and he's putting up relatively good numbers in the midst of his return. But everything else is just uncertain right now. For a while there, they were rolling out rosters of people that genuinely were not even thought of to be NBA caliber players for a while. Brandon Boston Jr. was getting legitimate playing time for some reason as a point guard. They had to call up Elfrid Payton off the street before a game against the Pacers because they were that depleted with the loss of DeJounte Murray at that specific point of time, who made his return yesterday night as well. Herbert Jones is also a very unfortunate injury for them to suffer, as possibly their best defensive player regardless of position. They're certainly hurting with that one right now. And then you've got a lot of other guys playing, like Antonio Reeves is a rookie getting quality time. Jalen Noel, for whatever reason, has played. The one bright spot, I guess, in the midst of all that is the fact that Yves Missi has been a pretty good replacement. He has been a very, very solid replacement for Giannis Valanciunas. I mean, I was not expecting it, but they did good by acquiring him. The Wizards as well also are just atrocious. And they have the nerve to go ahead and say that Kyle Kuzma may be very well looking for a trade. Who the hell is going to want him? Who's going to want him? He's been a net negative for the Wizards for most of the time that he's been there. And his 14.5 points per game are next best on a roster full of genuinely bad players for the most part. I mean, this team is still giving Marvin Bagley III playing time for some reason. Justin Champagnie is getting minutes out here, and surprisingly enough, had a solid game that they still would end up losing. Averaging 25.8% shooting from beyond the arc. Talking about he's a quality trade piece. No, you aren't. You're going to stay right where you are in this trash-ass team. Like, there's no way. All of that would culminate in this game yesterday where the Pelicans would have to mount a comeback against the Wizards, ironically enough, to win. C.J. McCollum had to tie his career high of 50 points and had to make 10 threes from the field to get this one. But they did get it. Credit to them. Meanwhile, you had Alex Saw stepping up and getting 19 points on the board to go along with Jordan Poole's 26, but it was not enough. They're both just going to fight it out for the tank to see who can successfully get the number one pick, or the rights to the number one pick at least in this upcoming draft. Like, full on fight for Cooper Flagg, the rights to draft them, because there's just no other route for these teams to go, really. I mean, the Wizards at least have a way out with some of the draft capital that they have acquired, but the Pels, you're paying Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson large sums of money, and you don't have any amount of draft capital to even compete. So, that is just, oh man. The Celtics currently sit at 26-9 on a 3-game winning streak, with Jason Tatum continuing to put together an MVP caliber season, and in the midst of guys like Jaylen Brown and even Kristaps Porzingis missing time due to different injuries. They have the 4th best offense in the league in terms of offensive rating, and they are still a top defense in the league with the 6th best defensive rating. But the Celtics will live and die by the 3. They will live and die by it. Every single time. There's like, you leave them open, they're going to get hot and catch fire, and they are going to shoot you out of a ball game. Their biggest enemy, and when it comes to that, is truly themselves, as I have said. Because you're going to get emboldened enough to continue to shoot them if you think that you're on a heater. When different teams start to contest them and you're still chucking them up and missing them, that's where you fall. Quite literally, they'll pass up open looks to wide open players in the paint to sell out, all for the 3. It's crazy stuff. When we get to the Timberwolves, though, they have been on a bit of a different trend themselves. They are currently, as of the recording of this video, 10th in the Western Conference at 17-16. They lost their last couple of games, and they have had just a very weird offense. Very, very odd. I mean, they're not even in the top half when it comes to offensive rating. But defensively, their calling card has been on that side, and it has rallied them into winning a good stretch of their last few games, especially after starting off the season the way that they did. So, credits to that. Anthony Edwards, as good as he can be, his efficiency over the past few games has been absolutely terrible. And there have been losses here where he has shot the team out of ball games. He lucked into getting a win against the Spurs despite shooting 6 of 20 from the field. But just an absolutely horrible stretch over the past month or so for him. Because, again, this season, for whatever reason, Chris Finch saw how much damage he was doing with his playstyle last season and decided to make him into a three-point specialist, which he doesn't even have to be. And 40.9% from three doesn't necessarily look like the worst thing, but you have to see how the games actually play out. And then you start to recognize that this is not the best thing for the team. Also says something when Julius Randle is emboldened to be a point guard or some stuff like that for some reason. At multiple points in the ball game on Thursday night against the Celtics, ironically enough, he was bringing the ball up the court like he was a point guard. And while he did have a decent game, a lot of those possessions did ultimately end without any score at all or in a turnover by Julius Randle, ironically enough. And this is the problem with him. This is literally the problem with him. This is exactly what he was doing in New York. He'll give you some good production and scoring, but he'll be a below average defender, especially for his size, which makes no sense. In that game, he was just getting exposed by everybody at will. Derek White was able to get him turning around as he made a three and then later on hit a bank shot from the corner on this man. You got Jason Tatum going at him all night and getting bucket after bucket. It was horrible to watch. And then he would work himself into some goofy-ass turnover, though the whole team was doing it. But I guess by the end of it, they had to kind of play the Celtics game to even last. And surely enough, it got close. I mean, they made 21 out of their 39 three-pointers in this ball game, and they hit threes when they absolutely needed to. Credit to Jaden McDaniels, and especially Dante DiVincenzo, who had not been doing that all season long. There's definitely been a decline for him there as well. Again, though, they thought, that they were going to be getting more contribution from him with him having the ball in his hands for some reason, which he wasn't even really doing a lot of in New York. So the fact that they believed that would work in the first place is pretty crazy to me. There's still time for them to figure things out, I guess. But they would suffer that 118-115 loss in their last match against the Celtics. Despite Julius Randle's best efforts, as Anthony Edwards would have just 15 points on 5 of 16 shooting. And he would miss a game-tying three-pointer. So, teams going in opposite directions there. And I guess moving on to the final two teams here. The Warriors have been the quintessential middle-of-the-pack basketball team. They would start off their season 12-3 before dropping 5 of their last 18 ball games? Or winning just 5 of their last 18 ball games since that stretch. Oh my goodness. Right? That's just insane. Stephen Curry had a couple of games mixed in there where, Father Time may have been starting to catch up in the eyes of some people. 2-point performance against the Grizzlies is nothing to write home about, I understand. But they would turn things around with this game on Thursday against the 76ers, in which he had 30 points and 10 assists on a perfect 8 of 8 3-point shooting night, which is the second best mark in NBA history, or tied for the second best. The people tied at first are both Latrell Sprewell and also 2 different times for Ben Gordon in his NBA career for some reason. Jalen Brunson also did it once against the Suns a couple of years back. Jonathan Kuminga has been playing absolutely well in spot minutes off the bench. They've tried to start him, but it seems like having that bench role seems to work best for him. He's been the second best scorer on the basketball team since that point. Wiggins has kind of had a resurgence overall, and Buddy Hield has certainly dropped off just a little bit, but it's fine. Dennis Schroeder has been decent. Did have a great game against the 76ers, though, coming out, hitting multiple threes in that ball game, getting to 15 points as well. Trace Jackson-Davis, despite having a little bit of a lackluster game in this one, has also been playing his absolute ass off, bro. There's just no other way to say that. 8.5 points for him to go along with 5.8 rebounds. He's been relatively efficient from the field. Meanwhile, for the 76ers, they had won 10 of their last 14, and it would become 10 of their last 15 after their loss to the 76ers. Well, to the Warriors, but yeah. There are many teams, or many question marks with this specific team as well. I mean, even with all of that, Tyrese Maxey has been playing like an all-star caliber player. 25.5 points per game leads the team, even though he's missed some time. And the efficiency has been down a little bit, but he's been asked to do so much more in the absence of, for quite a while, both Joel Embiid and Paul George. Then you had Jeremy McCain having a very solid rookie season for them, as maybe the best one this season on a potential Rookie of the Year trajectory, and he gets hurt. So now they're missing that bench production that would be pretty useful to go along with the help of Gaston Yabusele out of France. Ironically enough, being a former Celtic, has contributed nicely to the 76ers in his spot minutes with 9.8 points per game and 5.1 rebounds off the bench to go along with 50.7% shooting and 39.5% shooting from the three-point line. Keep in mind, too, that this is a one-year contract. There's not necessarily anything else guaranteed after this. But if he does maintain it, he will probably find a good role on another team somewhere. Their decisions to get all of Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson, Caleb Martin, they have not paid off like they thought it would. Andre Drummond as well. All of those moves have looked like failures so far. Now, I get that when everybody is healthy, because they're also missing Kelly Oubre Jr. too right now. When everybody's healthy, naturally those guys aren't going to see the court a whole bunch. But you at least expect them to step it up when they're out. Instead, they've completely succumbed to whatever pressure they believe they have on them at this point. But that's just a reflection on the 76ers front office trying to put faith in established veterans or players way past their prime to save your team. And naturally, they're doing what they probably were expected to do by most everybody else. But you, as the general manager and Daryl Morey, would expect otherwise. Like, okay. That'll do it as far as the teams go. In terms of other developments, I did mention the aforementioned Jimmy Butler trade request once more. I also just saw something come through from Shams Charania that just stated that Derrick Rose's number 1 will be retired for Chicago. It has to be the very youngest player in NBA history to even have a jersey number be retired. Ever. I would have to believe so. He's a former player now, but he's still relatively young. You see jersey retirements, even for the best players in history, come way later in their lives. We're talking about a man that's still in his mid-30s. That's respect. It still does not help the Bulls franchise. You have to revamp your team. They're not going to rally behind a retirement of Derrick Rose's number. It's going to take way more than that to actually make you competitive or actually make you go in a specific direction instead of being so mediocre. But it's solid. So, I mean, that's really about it. All right. That'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.